This week's video was suggested by Testaringo. Thank you so much for your comment. And if you have any suggestions for future videos, don't be afraid to comment it on any of the videos that you see posted on this channel. So a little bit of a disclaimer for this video. My sheets kind of bugged out and changed some of the stats presented all throughout. If you see some weird things like Joy or Nolan being under a column that says roamers, you can just brush it aside. It's just a small bug. But don't worry though, I double checked everything and there's no big error that really changes the final views presented in this one. So let's head on over to the video, okay? Okay, so to be honest, it hasn't changed that much. However, we're starting to see some things open up. Some picks and some bans that weren't seen so much in the first half of MPL Philippines Season 15, but since the patch dropped after Week 3 heading into Week 4, then we're starting to see some little adjustments here and there that might affect the bigger picture of the metagame right now. So we're gonna do something a little different for this video. Usually we do the breakdown stuff, we look at the plays, but we're gonna be looking at a lot of stats and numbers, alright, but I'll do my best to guide you. So let's start with this one, this fantastic graphic that was actually put up in Week 5, Day 1 of MPL Philippines Season 15 to highlight the stats for the first 4 weeks. Now, the meta hasn't changed that much. I say that because it still revolves around these most picks and bans, and you'll see that later on once we look at the post-patch stats. Look at the most banned heroes: Jusin, Fanny, Matilda, Loyi. Now, this is why, despite the blue and red side win rate being a little bit more close this time around, last season it got to a point where it was like 60%, 40% leaning towards blue side. Banning and drafting on the red side is still a bit of a chore because those 4 heroes I encircled right now on the screen, you can make a case for, hey, we should probably ban those for our first 3 bans alone. While the blue side has a lot more room to work with in terms of their bans, they can focus more in shutting down the first 2 picks, choosing the trade, because red side almost always, especially for the first half of the season, had to ban Jusin, Fanny, then up to them what their third ban is gonna be. Usually, it's the Matilda or the Loyi. Sometimes, we'd even see like a Granger or Harith go through, but again, more on that as we compare the stats for the pre-patch and the post-patch scenarios. But if you look at the most picked per role this time around, that pretty much is a great snapshot of where we at right now in terms of the power picks. So you usually want to get Suyo if it's available for you, first pick blue side. Then red side, not always, but would want to get Granger so that you don't end up with Suyo, Granger in the same team. And then consider picking up the Phovius because the Harith will probably go through for the gold laner because it's like Granger versus Harith. And then Farso right now, especially after the patch, has made her a much more hot pick for team. She was already really good, but again, as we look at the stats later on, even more so now, Farsa and especially Sicilian has gone up. And then for the roam, it's either the Jawhead or the Cho, but as we'll see later, Jawhead has actually risen up. Now, if you look at the most picks, yep, still pretty much that's it. It's the meta revolving around the trades between Suyo and Joy, Granger and Harith. Is Jusin and Loyi gonna be available? Who can get the Hilda or the Phovius? And it's all very familiar, right? Especially if you're watching MPL Philippines Season 15. A lot of the scenarios I mentioned, the heroes I've pointed out, very familiar in terms of the drafting. So let's look closer at the numbers. So on the screen right now are the pick trends for pre-patch and post-patch. Pre-patch being on the left one, post-patch being on the right. So this is the positions in the game and the trend of when they get picked up during the draft. So blue 1, blue 2, 3, blue 4, 5, red 1, 2, and so on. It's all there. So the one that stands out the most for me is, look at blue 1. Over here on blue 1 pre-patch, you see 58% for the jungle, 22% gold. That 22%, it's usually Harith or Granger, leaning a little bit more towards the Granger surprise priority pickup. While the jungle, of course, we talked about the Suyo Joy priority. But when we go on over to post-patch, this is where Kalea, we haven't mentioned Kalea yet, but here we go. This is where Kalea's inclusion into the hero pool has changed the priority somewhat. You still want to get your jungler first. It's a power pick trade between Joy and Suyo, but then now the option of the Kalea comes up. 22.86%. Now you're not thinking of rushing the Granger, the Harith so much. If the Kalea is available, maybe you'd rather go for the Kalea. So that's one obvious change that Kalea's inclusion has brought up into the meta. Then when you go into the blue side 2-3, usually it was golden XP then that gets picked up right away here. This is when, okay, for example, blue side picks up Suyo first pick. Other side picks up, let's say, Granger Phoveus, you know, in terms of the power picks. Now, blue 2-3 would want to go, oh, but there's a Phoveus on the other side. Are we still willing to Harith? It's a choice. We either go Harith or Irithel, then you pick up your EXP laner, which right now, or for the first half, it was usually the Hilda into the Phoveus, or maybe even CC into the Phoveus that gets picked up here. But when we go on over now to the blue 2-3 post-patch, you see that teams are willing to stretch out their imagination a little bit more. Jungle mid priority has gone up alongside the decreased priority in picking up the EXP. So things are a little bit more balanced. There's a lot more room to work with and a little bit more creativity to work with around the blue 2-3 picks. But when you look on over to the red side, you see the patterns really haven't changed so much. You can see it in the colors actually of the most highlighted. You saw a little bit more roam pickups for red 1-2 post patch, but other than that, it's still pretty much the same. If Granger or Harith, whichever one is available, although most of the time probably you'd want to pick up the Granger, then you lock in the Granger. If it's a surprise Joy first pick, then you'd want to pick up the Harith at times, or you just build around your Granger instead if you're going to be picking him red 1-2. But yeah, if you look at red 3, 4, 5, it's all pretty much the same. Red 5 is the EXP because you're going into the last pick usually with a little bit more flexibility, because whether the roam or the EXP gets picked up, that's when you show your hand of, okay, it's actually the XP that we haven't picked yet. The roamer is what you saw, but since we played into flexibility, now this is when we see it. But it's usually EXP that gets picked up last. However, one thing to note about this meta is that you sometimes go into the very last pick of the game on the red side with a surprise mid lane pickup, because there's also a trade revolving around Valentina and whatnot that you are considering heroes such as Sicilian or Faramis. And sometimes if you go into the very last pick, red side, and you're thinking, they need a mid laner, it might usually be Sicilian or Faramis as a surprise, or if somehow she's still available for picking and the draft looks good, she's supplemented well enough, then it goes into the Farsa. Hey, if you're still watching up until now, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and share the video if you haven't yet, and only if you want to, and to subscribe to the channel if you like the content that we're presenting. It's a little bit nerdier this time around for this video, but again, thank you so much for sticking around. Let's head back into it. Okay, so to be able to visualize things a little bit better with a few of the conditions that we laid out on here, let's look at it from the sequence as we would in the draft on broadcast. So let's look first at the first phase blue side bans. Again, pre-patch on left, post-patch on the right. So pre-patch blue side bans, you're still looking at the Loi, Phoveus, Matilda, Fanny, Joy. Those are still like some of the priorities, because you want to take out some of the power picks that the red side can pick up for the first two picks, and so that you can determine a little bit more how trading goes. Again, because pre-patch, it's almost always Fanny, Juicin. You really need to ban it on the red side, as you're gonna see here. Look, Juicin, Fanny, topmost bans. Matilda is right after that, and then it's up to you whether you want to take out Loi, Harith, Joy, and all that, but it pretty much revolves around Juicin and Fanny. So, looking at the blue side bans, pre-patch and post-patch, not much really has changed. But there is one hero that changed things a little bit now for the blue side and has risen in priority. One of the heroes that we mentioned earlier, the Jawhead. So in first 3 weeks, Jawhead was actually only banned out on the blue side once. But when you look on over to weeks 4 and 5, he was banned 8 times. He rose up in priority banning for the blue side. So okay, that's something you have to watch out for. Then, if you also look at the other bans post-patch, you see some heroes that, make things a little bit more interesting. So, the Alice bans, that's because teams went up against Twisted Minds. They had to respect the Alice. But now you see teams, alright, Chip, I think we have to consider banning out now. Sicilian now also becoming a first phase blue side ban because it might come up as the third pick that teams would want to consider picking up there. Jusin even was banned out once. Jusin was never banned out in the first half of the season on the blue side. You see Kalea, you see Hilda, and you even see Hanzo. Despite the slight adjustment to him, teams have actually started picking up Hanzo a little bit more because they're starting to understand, how he flows, and teams are more willing to try him out. So already with the weeks 4 and 5 blue side bans, we're starting to see some things change. But then when you look at the blue side picks, it's still pretty much the same. Suyo, Joy, but then here comes the introduction of Kalea into the mix. You see Kalea now as one of the priority blue side pickups. Granger and Chip rose up as well, with Chip getting at least now 2 games getting picked up as a blue side pickup. Alongside that, you can see in the blue 1 pick for pre-patch, Harith was way up there with Suyo Joy, so they really wanted to trade those power picks out. But in this time around, for the blue 1 picks for weeks 4 and 5, yeah, it's a very Suyo heavy. But then you see now with a little bit more mix with Joy, Kalea, and Granger. So we're starting to see just a little bit of a shift with what Kalea brings to the table in terms of how it affects the blue side priority pick. Now, the biggest changes that Kalea and the patch brought on over is actually for the banning on the red side, which means that red side has a little bit more leeway to actually dictate the tempo of the draft. It's not just blue side dictating most of it, red side can dictate now too. You see that from the decreased percentage of the Juicin ban. 98% for the first 3 weeks, 77, close to 78%. That's still very high, but there's a little bit more room to work with, because if you look at the first phase red bans, for the first 3 weeks, it's very Juicin heavy, Fanny, Matilda heavy, then Loyi Harith. If you visualize it, it's like, all right, yeah, that's what it looked like for the first 3 weeks. But then when you look at the weeks 4 and 5, of course, Kalea gets brought into the mix, Chip as well. Kalea and Chip now rising as ban priorities alongside Loyi, Matilda, Harith, and of course, since Twisted Minds is there, you take out the Alice. Suyo now also actually getting banned out more in weeks 4 and 5 when he was never banned out in the first phase, because you want to play around that trade-off. You know what? You go ahead and pick up Suyo, we can get power picks too. Now, first phase can say, we can take out the Suyo alongside with some other heroes because now there are more power picks. Kalea, Chip can get let through. That means that, we'll play around those trades. We don't always have to lean so heavily into Suyo, Joy, Granger, Harith. There's a little bit more flexibility now if you're on the red side. Now, if you look at the priority picks on the red side, okay, first half of the season, pretty much Granger, Suyo, whoever's available there, that's the one that you almost always have to go with. And then you play around the Fulvius, Harith, Badang, Joy, Loyi, Gatot Kacha, Moskov, Hilda. When I recite those heroes out, again, these are stuff that you can visualize, especially if you've been watching a lot of the season. But then when you go on over to the post-patch, yeah, it's Granger, but now Harith has become a little bit more prioritized because teams are leaning a little bit more towards that trade. Joy has seen less pickups on the red side, not always so rushed anymore. Gatot Kacha still teetering around, 5-2 picks somewhat, but it's still not that highly coveted anymore. Similar as to the Lo Yi on the red side, because now teams would want to actually pick up Lo Yi blue side if it's open for them. They don't really want to give that or make it available for the red side team. Of course, Jawhead has risen in priority considerably so after only getting picked up twice as priority pickups in the first 3 weeks. Come week 4 and 5, now he's suddenly up there with Granger, Harith, Suyo, Jawhead, Phovius. Cho, still somewhat a little bit the same, but this just adds more to the point that we're talking about here, that yes, the power pick trading is still pretty much the same. 4 heroes you're looking at: Granger, Suyo, Joy, Harith. But there's a little bit more room for options now, because the addition of Kalea, Chip, Jawhead, Phovius, although he's always been there, Lo Yi, Matilda, those heroes, and with Kalea opening things up, Juicin getting a little bit more opened up now as well. Now you realize that, okay, it's not just about those 4 picks. We have to consider the other power picks now, the extra layer of the heroes I just mentioned, to either get to those heroes or accept that, okay, those 4, maybe you can take out the Joy. You just play around Suyo, Granger, Harith. Those are your major trades, because now you're seeing more teams pick up the Hayabusa a little bit more, who, by the way, has a very good record in the second half of the season. As you can see here, he's actually undefeated in 4 games in weeks 4 and 5. The Suyo Joy priority in the jungle still very much more active, but with a Hayabusa getting undefeated, Alpha getting picked up a little bit more because Matilda's getting opened up a little bit more, Lucas in the jungle getting revisited by some teams, and Demon Kite and Aurora playing it very well, although Lucas jungle still to me quite risky. So he's so dependent on getting the first turtle or getting early kills early on that it's so hard to recover with the Lucas. Revisiting the hero pick ban trend again for the blue side, for the first 3 weeks, Irithel was way up there, usually the second option to the Granger, Harith. So it was like Granger, Harith, Irithel is usually the one available for you blue side, because Moskov might be the one taken by the red side team. But once we got to the post-patch realm, Harith and Joy up there, this is what we're talking about, where teams now are willing to give the Harith Joy to the blue side, give those up in the trade, because red side now wants to get heroes such as the Phovius, Jawhead, and they'd rather pick up the Granger, although Granger still healthily has some picks as well on the blue side. But now Cho, who was also up there, 10 picks blue side, shared with Irithel Granger for the first 3 weeks, he has only been picked once in the blue 2-3. So now the trade leans a little bit more towards Jawhead, Sicilian even. Blue side teams are starting to see Lo Yi open up for them, Juicin, Valentina open up for them as well. There were a couple of times where red side didn't even pick up the Suyo, blue side picked up the Suyo at 2-3. This is where we're seeing a little bit more flexibility. Again, things are starting to shape up and change. Now looking at the second banning phase for the blue side, CC and Chip up there, pre-patch, post-patch, Farsa and Vexana getting banned considerably more. So now teams are going into the second phase with looking more at the trades around the mid, because as we'll see later in the stats, with the rise of heroes such as Sicilian, Farsa, Vexana has gone out a little bit of favor, because now she's getting banned a little bit more by the blue side. She's a little bit less available, but teams, there are times also where like, you know what, I wouldn't want to go up against a Vexana because glue is an option that we want to pick up on the blue side if it's available for us, because there's a good chance that red side already has Phovius. Glue is probably gonna be one of the best roamers that EXP laters that you could pick up, so of course you want to take out the Vexana. So again, when we look at the bans and really compare them, especially for the blue side, you can really visualize and see how the ordering has changed somewhat, how the priorities have changed somewhat. Jawhead was banned a little bit more blue side, a little bit less blue side now, because there's a good chance the red team already got it, or maybe they don't want to play or they're willing to let the Jawhead through. You see Glue still up there. Hilda getting banned significantly more in the post-patch realm. Lucas as well getting banned out more in post-patch. So there's that. Going back to the first phase, you also have to acknowledge that Eve getting banned less changed up the draft a little bit for the blue team. A slight change, but now it opens up a different realm of possibilities around the center of the map. When you look at the second phase bans for the red side, it's so different. In pre-patch, you can see lots of Jawheads, Eves, Tigreals, Hildas. But then once you go on over the second phase, Hilda has shot up. Jawhead was barely banned by the red side team in the second phase because again, he rose up in picking for the priority pickups. And if ever they want to be able to pick it up for themselves later on in the draft, you see Valentina, Sicilian, Farsa getting banned out more, so a lot more mid lane bans, so they're playing more into the mid lane trade. Lucas as well getting banned out. So yeah, there alone you can see that it shifted a little bit. In the pre-patch realm, you saw that the second phase red bans leaned a little bit more towards the Roamer EXP trade. The mid lane still there, while for the post-patch, it's very blatantly leaning a little bit more towards the bans and the trading around the mid laners. We've discussed a lot already. Let's wrap things up. Let's look at it from role to role. Pre-patch, Granger, Harith priority. Irithel was up there. Moskov. Gold laners almost always just revolved around the picks. But when we go on over to post-patch, Granger, Harith, oh yeah, definitely still them. But Moskov and Carry, a little bit more now over Irithel. Bruno got introduced more into the mix. So we're seeing that the gold laners options are opening up a little bit more. Yes, it's still revolving around Granger, Harith, but Moskov has risen back up in the priority. Irithel has fallen out considerably, while Bruno is getting introduced a little bit more into the mix, and we got to see one Beatrix game in weeks 4 and 5. Looking at the junglers, yes, it's still Suyo and Joy, but Lucas is getting considered a little bit more in the jungle. Nolan was actually surprisingly untouched in the weeks 4 and 5, but you saw Hanzo get a bit more pickups, and the times where we saw Hanzo, it always had like a high amount of kills, but it was always difficult for teams to make it work. He hasn't won yet, but he's quite impactful. But it's just like for Hanzo, it's like kill, and then what else can we get after that? It's hard to see a Hanzo snowball from the early on. Once the Hanzo hits its power spike, it's like you have to win something or you're not going to win with it at all. And then, of course, you see Fanny, of course, if available, still getting picked up. Again, we mentioned earlier, Hayabusa's undefeated for week 4 and 5. And I want to see, alongside the Suyo and Joy, for the Hayabusa get picked up more. As much as I am a Lucas hater, I want to see teams try to stretch out the possibilities with it, although it is very conditional for getting that snowball early on. While Alpha, to me, he's like a little bit of a punching bag. If you want him to be the snowball type, sure. If you want him to be the utility type, can be. So it's like you can choose what flavor of Alpha you're gonna get. Alpha can get multiple deaths, barely any kills, more on the assists, but still a team could win with it. I'm imagining Team Liquid when I say that. So Alpha sort of like the, hey, if we have the Matilda open, if we feel like we can't play around the Alpha, let's play around the Alpha, and then let's adjust accordingly to what we need. Looking at the mid lane now, this is where it gets really interesting. Farsa, Vexana, Valentina, Loyi. Now, if you look at the post-patch, Sicilian has gone up alongside Valentina. Farsa, Loyi still there. But we're seeing a bit more Faramis picks up. Jusin opened up way more compared to the first 3 weeks of the season. Selena's still getting picked up by teams, but let's see if she'll still be one of the main options to go for. But I think with teams now leaning a little bit more towards the Sicilian and understanding just how powerful his mid-game power spike is, how good he is for holding, Sicilian plus Granger, or Sicilian plus Harith, Sicilian to answer Harith, Sicilian to be the late game condition against a lineup that already picked up the Granger. he's such a great mid laner pickup right now, and I can't wait for teams to pick him up a bit more. So yeah, mid lane is where we get to see a lot of the shakeups, and I'd reckon the decreased pickups on the Vexana and more bans on her comes from the fact that more teams want to pick up the glue. So if blue side wants to pick up glue, well, we saw the numbers earlier, they'd want to take that out. EXP lane is another one where we see some important changes. Phoveus Hilda, yeah, still up there in terms of priority, but with what was once Edith Lucas priority in the EXP alongside Badang, CC, now we see in the EXP Phoveus, Hilda, Glue getting picked up more, as we mentioned earlier. And yeah, you're just revolving around that. With Glue getting considered more by teams, we saw the 2 Benedetta games brought out by Liquid. I think teams are starting to bring back the idea of, hey, I wonder if we can get a creative around the EXP lane for our pickups. Lucas in the EXP as an experiment has definitely fallen out. I think we're going to be seeing significantly less Lucas picks for the EXP lane. If ever, safe to assume that maybe the Lucas will be going into the jungle a little bit more. But definitely Glue is here to stay in the EXP alongside the Badang, and I like that how Edith is also still continued to be shown some more love by teams. And of course, we already discussed this earlier, the roam priority is still pretty much the same, but teams are starting to get a little bit more games with the Matilda in. Kalea definitely shook up the ordering and the priority in the meta. Jawhead now becoming the more go-to. Cho sort of dipping out of favor. Gatot Kacha and Hylos being a little bit more of the go-tos of the teams. But yeah, still pretty much the same in terms of the roam. It's just Kalea was introduced in, and then the Matilda can be played a little bit more. A little bit more rambly this time around, but hopefully you got to follow. There was a lot discussed here, but hopefully while I was dictating the names of the heroes and all that, you got to visualize it in your head, how the drafts usually go. And yes, again, the main thing about this post-patch realm is that the meta, the heroes that you want to go after haven't really changed. But since the introduction of Kalea brings in now another band that you'd want to look into for the blue side, teams opening up the Fanny, Juice, and Matilda, Loyi a little bit more, things are changing just a little bit. We're seeing a little bit more variation. This is like I would call it like a remix, a chapter 2 of the meta that we've already seen for the first 3 weeks of MPL Philippines. And that was brought about by, again, Kalea being available, Chip now getting revisited by teams, Juice and Matilda, Loyi getting opened up a little bit more, Hilda and Glue pretty much replacing CC and Lucas a little bit, Lucas getting picked in the EXP less. I could go on and on, but I've already went on long enough. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to watch MPL Philippines this week. See ya!